One video game franchise that everyone has heard of is Call of Duty. Whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny that it's been one of the biggest franchises in video game history. Now, what do I think of the series? Personally, I'm sick of it. They come out with one every year, it's the same rehashed game, and to tell you the truth, the last game that I bought brand new from the Call of Duty series was Call of Duty Black Ops from 2010, 8 years ago from today. So anyways, it's time to talk about the real 2. Call of Duty 2 for the Xbox 360. This was the first Call of Duty game that I played, and still probably my favorite out of the whole bunch. Developed by Infinity Ward and published by Activision in 2005, this is a launch game for the Xbox 360, and this is probably the best launch game out of the whole catalog. Fun little fact though, this game was actually published by Konami in Japan. I always thought that was really weird. I would never thought to ever see Konami publish a Call of Duty game. This game also has my favorite Call of Duty artwork. I just love how it depicts D-Day on both sides of the box. Since this is the Game of the Year edition, it also comes with a nice documentary on how the game was made. It even comes with some multiplayer maps. But that doesn't really matter anymore because, well, it's pretty much a ghost town nowadays. First of all, I want to talk about the differences between this game and later games. Obviously, since it's an earlier game, not everything that you think would be in the game is going to be here. For instance, you can't sprint in this game, which you think would be a huge problem, but really, it's not. Instead of sprint, it's replaced with binoculars, which honestly, I don't use that much, and I never really used all that much, so I find them pretty useless. But this is one of those times where you didn't need sprint. The gameplay isn't as fast as it is in later COD games, which personally I do prefer. I do prefer games with a slower, more tactical approach to them than just balls-to-the-wall action. Now, there are a few levels where it does open up a bit and you're not able to move faster, which can get annoying, but it's very few and far in between. Another difference with this game is that you can't throw back live grenades like you can in later games. This is a problem because, especially when you play on the higher difficulty levels, they just rain grenades down onto you and you can't do anything but run. And most of the times when you get out of cover, you just get shot once and then you're dead. And that's something I'm really glad they introduced in the rest of the series. This is also the first game in the series to introduce the classic grenade indicator. This is really helpful because when you're playing a game like this, the grenades aren't always obvious and it can get very annoying. Now let's briefly talk about the similarities. And I do mean briefly because there's not a whole lot to say here. If you've played this one, if you've played even later ones, then you'll feel right at home with this one. The only thing that's different are the controls, and it's just one thing. Instead of sprint, you have binoculars. Now let's talk about the single player experience. This is back when Call of Duty had a little more focus on the single player rather than the multiplayer. The single player here is broken up into 3 different campaigns: the Russians, the British, and the Americans. All 3 campaigns are well designed, and they all take you through some epic battle. For instance, in the Russians, you got Stalingrad, and in the Americans, you got D-Day. The action in Call of Duty 2 is some of the best action in the entire Call of Duty series. It's simple, but it works really well. In later Call of Duty games, they try to do something so over the top and so ridiculous that it doesn't really keep you engaged. The action here does keep you engaged. There are also some pretty cool scenes here, especially the ones that are ripped straight from movies, like Saving Private Ryan. As the single player goes on though, it does get a little bit repetitive. The objectives are always the same: blow up this gun, or kill this guy, or hold this position for 5 minutes, or however long it is. The objectives themselves aren't the most interesting thing ever, but the combat is so good in this game that it kind of makes you forget about it. There's a very good variety of weapons in this game. You got a ton of rifles, a ton of machine guns, pistols, huge flat guns, and you can even drive a tank at one point, which is awesome. They all feel pretty good to use, but honestly, I'm not too blown away by the sound effects. Even when I was just playing this for my very first time at 7 years old, I didn't think the gun sounds sounded all that great. I mean, they're not bad, but compared to later COD games like World at War, even World War II, I think the gun sound effects could have definitely been improved. One thing that I do love especially about this game is the battle chatter. When you hear all these different lines of dialogue just going off and NPCs going off of one another, and especially when they're hurt or they're reloading, it really does immerse you into the world. I will mention one thing, that there's barely a story in this game. It focuses mainly on the action and obviously the gunplay. But this is one of the few games where I don't mind not really having a story. In most of my games, I prefer having a lot of great characters or just an awesome plot. But here, this is one of the few times where I can just sit back, relax, and just kill some Nazis, and I'm okay with it. That'll do it for today's review. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in another video.